Hello, and welcome back. This video is about creating a minimap and hiding some objects from it. We do this by creating a scene capture component, which is basically a special camera that is set to output what it sees to a render texture, and then we use that render texture in a widget to show it on screen for the player. For this video, I've created a fresh third-person blueprint project, created a folder named Minimap, and added a single image that we'll use later. To start, we can right-click, go to Texture, Render Texture. I'm going to name this RT Minimap. Then we right-click the render texture, create a material. Call this Matte Minimap. Open that up. We want to set the material domain. Oh, and I forgot. And go up to Editor Preferences, set my Asset Editor Open Location to main window, which when you open something, it goes to the main window. All right, in the material, we set the material domain to user interface, reconnect the RGB to final color. Next, we're going to open the third-person character. I'm going to add a new spring arm. Under that, I'm going to create the scene capture component. It is the 2D version. For the spring arm, we want to rotate it -90 on Y so that it's facing straight down. The scene capture component will set the location to -2000 X. This is X, not Z, because the spring arm has already been rotated. We want to set it to orthographic, and I'll just set this to 1200. Need to send the target as the render texture we created. I'm going to go click these three dots, save on compile always, which is a personal preference. Next, we create the widget. And in the widget, I want to pull in a canvas, put an overlay under that, and I'm going to drag in 2 images. I'm going to use the first just as a background. I'm going to put the overlay in the top right corner. I'm going to move it out a little bit. Make it 200 by 200. I'm going to make the children fill, but the minimap needs to have a padding. And I'll set the background to black. Need to set on the minimap, the image will be the material. And then on the third person character, under begin play, I'm going to create widget. Choose the widget we just created. Save that as a variable. and add it to viewport. So you can see the little mini map in the top right corner. If I move around, you can see that it's following, but it's also rotating. If you don't like the rotating, you can go into the spring arm component, look for inherit, and uncheck these. Going to shrink this back down a little bit. Minimap's kind of small. I'm going to set it back up. Let's try 300. It's better. So that's a basic setup for a minimap. It shows the scene, it shows the meshes, it shows the character. But what if we want to control the camera location instead of the player? We can do that by going into the character, going to create a function, toggle minimap control. I'm going to create a variable, is camera control. Drag out the boolean. I want a not bool. And then I'm just going to drag this out on here to set it. So we're just toggling the value of is camera control. Next, I'm going to take the scene capture component. I want to set absolute location. Which depends on is camera control. So basically, when we are going to control the camera, it is setting the absolute, or setting the scene capture component from location to absolute world location. And then otherwise it's setting it back to relative. In either case, we want to reset the location by calling set world location. We're going to get the actor location. Going to add 2000 to the z-axis. And in the event graph, we need to change the controls. So when the IA move is being used, I'm just going to add a branch here, hold B, click. This branch, when the camera is not being controlled, will continue along the normal path. Otherwise, we are adding a relative location to the scene capture component. Take the input horizontal and vertical movement, multiply it by 10. Need to split this first. The Y value goes into X. And the X value will go into Y. And then we also need a way to tell it to call toggle minimap control. And here I'm just going to use the keyboard event for tab. And before I hit play, I'm going to go back and connect this that I missed earlier. So with that, walking around, camera's following, hit tab, I use WASD again, and it moves the camera. Hit tab again, recenters back on the player. And since we're using this to control the camera, why not make it bigger? So in here I can go in and duplicate this overlay. Going to make sure they're both variables. I'll just call this overlay small and overlay large. The large version we want in the center of the screen, and we'll make it 600. We go into the graph, add a function, call this set mode. This will take a Boolean. Is embiggened. Create a branch. In the case where it's being embiggened, we take the large overlay. We're going to set the visibility to visible, and the small to hidden. Otherwise, we are setting the small to visible and the large to hidden. Which also means when we're in here, we want the large initially to be hidden. In the third person character, we'll use our conveniently saved WPP Minimap to call set mode with is camera controlled. Now when I hit tab, we have a bigger version that we can use to look around. And lastly, what if we don't want to represent our actors with their meshes? The player is hard to see in the smaller minimap, so let's convert it to a sprite. To do that, you need to drag in an image file. How convenient. And then you right-click it, go to Sprite Actions, Create Sprite. And in the player, we can add a sprite, paper sprite component. We want to set its position above the player. Set the source sprite. Make sure we remove the collision. And we want to rotate it so it's facing upwards towards the camera. Not sure what I did to the position. Oh, I put a negative. We'll just pop that up there. Now when you play, you can see in the minimap that the icon is there, and you can see that it's also there in the world. Looks like I'm about to be sucked up by a black hole. So, as you can see in the minimap, it's harder to see because it's small, you can still see the characters in there. So we can do two things. We can set the mesh of the character to hidden in scene capture. And we can do the opposite for the paper sprite, visible in scene capture only. Now the black hole is no longer there, and on the minimap, there's no mesh. Now, it might get a little cumbersome attaching a paper sprite component to all the objects you want to convert into sprites in the minimap. So instead, we can create an actor with a paper sprite component and attach it to any appropriate actor. I'm going to create a blueprint class actor. Call this BP minimap show. In this, we'll do the same. We will add the sprite, paper sprite component. We're going to set the sprite. Going to rotate it so it's facing up. Remove the collision. And make sure it is visible in the scene capture only. Now we're going to cheat a little. I'm going to create these in the player character after begin play. Going to make a new function. Going to call this create minimap helper. In here, we're going to use get all actors with tag. I'm going to use a tag minimap.show for each of those actors. I'm going to spawn actor from class, the new minimap blueprint we just created. This will be at the actor location of each object. And then I will attach actor to actor. This is attaching the new minimap component. To that parent. We want to keep world. And then we can also get the component by class, components. We're going to choose static mesh. We're just going to get the first entry in this case. So I could have used get component, but otherwise you would want to use a for each loop here. I'm going to be calling set hidden in scene capture. That will set the same checkbox that we used. Now when I run this, you can see these blue boxes, for example. If I go and set the tag, you can see that it was not added. because functions need to be called. So now we can set that tag on any object in the editor that we want to convert for the minimap from its mesh into an icon or a sprite. However, that could be a pain. So you can also just set it on a blueprint, and all of the objects made from that blueprint will have the tag. So I'm going to remove the paper sprite component from the character. If I run this again, you can see the paper sprite's no longer there. It will then set the tag. And it's back. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video and you would like to see more, you know what to do. If you have suggestions on future content or abilities you would like to see, let me know down below.